I'm Matt Buell with M Buell Studio and on behalf of the Woodworking Network. It's monthly topic time. So, this month we're talking about one of my favorite things, getting dirty. Yeah. We're going to talk about doing maintenance on your machinery and your tooling because it's really important. And as an owner of a business or as an owner-operator of a business, it is your job to oversee and make sure that your investments and your best employees, called your machines and tools, are running properly. So let's talk about it. The reason why this is one of my favorite things to talk about is this is what separates the pros from the amateurs. This is not the glorious work. This is not seeing a piece kind of come to form and that kind of joy you get from seeing it happen, or the enjoyment you get from people complimenting on how good your work is or getting paid. This is kind of the trench work that no one really sees you do. And I've heard people define integrity as how you conduct yourself when no one is watching. Well, I think that success in business is very similar to that. And it's how you conduct the tasks that don't give you an immediate gratification or payoff, right? But that are fundamental in everything working here. And success can be really defined by how you're handling, or are you handling, the more trench work kind of tasks that don't give immediate gratification, but that have to get done. And maintenance and tooling and all that stuff really falls in that category. The payoff on doing this is not instant, and it's only observable really as you're going. And also, there's nothing worse than investing my hard-earned money or making payments on big machines, not taking care of them, only to have to upgrade or replace them later because of me not doing my due diligence with the machine. That's embarrassing, that's shameful, and that's for children. We're grown-ups, we run businesses, we take care of our nice stuff, and that's how it takes care of us. Let's start with machines, the big bad stuff. Now I want to define what I mean by machines. I know it seems obvious, but I like to be clear. So to me, I define machinery as something where I am holding the workpiece, whether it's wood or some of the substrate, and I am taking the workpiece to it. Right? So a table saw, obviously it's not on. Don't be afraid. This is a machine because the wood is in my hands, or the substrate. So that's how I define it. But other examples, joiner, planer, bandsaw, drill press, drum sander, wide belt sander, dust collector is actually a machine in its own weird way. So when it comes to machines, I like to do like one afternoon a month. I will, even if I have to come in on like a weekend and just spend a Saturday afternoon, turn on some tunes or go with some headphones, and I really just, my number one priority is to do a systems check. Like I want to make sure that everything is moving properly, right? That my fence on this is still lining up square, which it is. I'm checking that on all my machines. Basically, I want to know, are my fences holding the angles they're supposed to hold, or are they proper still? I'm checking all my blades for sharpness, and also, are they holding the set angles? Are they accurate? Because things move when you're working a lot, and it's part of machinery. So those are the big ones I'm going to do on a monthly. I'm also going to check for moving parts, right? Because a lot of these machines, especially like a planer, it requires a special oil that needs to go in and lubricate some of the stuff that's moving. There's more description on that in your manuals for each machine, okay? And I really recommend you take a look because that's important stuff. So moving parts, accuracy for fences and blades, that's kind of my monthly thing. But also when it comes to the blades and bits, I'm wanting to also check for sharpness because depending on what substrate you're working on, like this is rock maple or hard maple, it's dense. And if I'm running a lot of it, it's wearing my blades down. So blades, you have two options. You can just burn and replace, or you can go with a sharpening service. Sometimes you're just subject to what you got available. And for me, where I live, there's not a lot of sharpening services around. And historically, I have found that they are not a whole lot cheaper than just getting a new blade. I hate it, but because my blade's also out for a certain amount of time. So every now and then I'll send one off because it's a really expensive blade. But you might have one close to you where it's way more cost efficient. But for me, I usually burn and replace. As you can see, I'm getting ready to swap these guys out soon. So once a month, I'm doing the heavy duty checks. Working, moving parts, sharpness, and making sure that our angles are good, okay? Once a month. Now, about 4 times a year, I go into what I call like heavy mode. Like we're gonna get in here and we're gonna gut this stuff. And by that, I mean, I'm doing the things I just talked about, but I'm also gonna get in the guts of most of my equipment. And I mean, I'm getting in there with a like a small, like mini dust extractor, and I am cleaning it out to where I'm gonna get it to as close to showroom nice as I can. Maybe it's a pride thing, but they run better when they are maintained and they are clean. It's also easier just to see where my hands are, where a workpiece might be, or if a screw falls or something. It's just clean shop safe. So about 4 times a year, I go into heavy maintenance. Now, also with that, I will do a cleaning of my beds. And by that, I mean, I'm gonna look for rust, I'm gonna remove the rust, and then I'm gonna come back in and do a nice paste wax. And it's great, especially 4 times a year, every season turn. You know, change of season, that's a good time to do it. And I do it. And man, once you get in the habit of doing it, your machinery is more accurate, it's safer, and it's more pleasant to work with. You know, having a bandsaw dialed in perfectly is an amazing machine. Having one that's not cared for and you're not dialing it in and doing the maintenance on is a bad day. Now, you cannot take my suggestions and go ahead and mill up thousands of dollars worth of walnut on your joiner, only to find out your fence was out 2 degrees and you didn't catch it. And then you can write me the email crying about how much money you just lost. Next, we're going to talk about power tools. My definition of that, in case anyone's wondering, is a tool that is motorized, that is handheld, that I take to the workpiece, right? Obviously, this should be clamped, but we're not actually doing anything. But tool to workpiece, very different, okay? So also about once a month, I'll try and jump in for an hour or two and just go with the ones I use a lot. Like I have some tools that I don't, you know, like some of my sanders or specialty power tools, I don't just reach for it all the time. So I usually just clean them up as I put them away. But on my more daily drivers, once a month, I'm gonna grab them and just tidy them up, okay? And by that, what I really am saying is, I'm gonna, you know, look in the jigsaw, like it accumulates a lot of pitch and gunk, right? So I'm gonna get in here with like a small toothbrush, you know, whatever I've got to do to get in here. And a lot of times you're going for, you know, small nozzle and just kind of suck it all out of there. Because what happens is, especially with MDF or other substrates, if you're cutting a lot of it, the pitch and the gunk really build up in these tools, and it can affect it. Especially here where you've got kind of your blade guards. It'll mess with you. So clean it. And that's kind of the deal. So I look at routers, jigsaws, sanders. Please check your sanders once a month. But even drills like brushes, although most are brushless these days, it smells like rental skates. Replace your brushes. But with routers as well, they get a lot of pitch and gunk on them. And if you're not cleaning them after every use, it will build up. So if you jump in there once a month, it's going to allow you to keep them tidy and running right. And by doing that, those machines, especially cutting power tools, they're safer, more accurate, more pleasure to work with. But also, they're not cheap. And a lot of young people start businesses and they don't take care of their stuff, especially the smaller ones. I mean, everyone knows rebuying a table saw is painful, but rebuying a jigsaw adds up. And I buy good ones because they're accurate. So I spend a good bit on them. So I want to make sure I take good care of them. And I've had routers that I have bought and invested in and took care of. I've been running for 10 years and they're fine, but it's because they are taken care of. Also with routers, just like blade replacement and knife replacement on your machinery, routers and track saws we go through some blades. Jigsaws too, but I don't think anyone has their jigsaw blades resharpened. Not that I've ever heard of. Please message me if you have. That's amazing. As I had said with machinery, I don't have a sharpening service close by that the rates are really worth sending them out. So, for certain bits like a roundover, I'm just going to order some, good ones and run them till they die, and I'll replace them. I use a lot of edging bits, and I use a lot of up spiral and down spiral bits. So I clean them. But obviously, when they're done, I just toast them. It's just not worth it for me. Now, you might live in a city where there's a sharpening service down the street, and it's way worth it to you. Do it. You got to look into that. It's your business. You got to figure out what's going to work for you and your budget. Okay. Also, when it comes to track saws and router bits, you can clean them, and believe it or not, getting rid of the pitch and the gunk on them and stuff actually helps them last a little bit longer. I used a product called Simple Green where I would soak a lot of my stuff in it for a little bit and then bring it out and clean it. And it kept some saw blades running during some jobs that were pretty impressive. Pretty impressive stuff. So cleaning makes a difference, okay? So last but not least, when I talk about cleaning these guys out, especially sanders, I'm taking the pad off because I need to inspect it later, but I'm cleaning. Like, I'm getting this stuff out of here. Pitch and gunk buildup around moving parts is not cool, and eventually can come back to haunt you. And in my experience, especially younger years of doing this, when I didn't quite jump in and take care of stuff as much, I didn't have a young wood pro host to help me. It always happened on the days I didn't need it to. Something caught up with me that I wasn't maintaining. In the middle of a job, tight deadline, or you're trying to get home because you got family stuff. I mean, who knows? But it's always that time where you just can't afford it, literally and figuratively. So it's worth it to do this. Sanders take a lot of wear and tear. So I'm a huge fan of keeping them cleaned up, all right? And getting the gunk out of them. But just as important is your pads. These suckers can die. And I really recommend once a month checking your pads. One, it does make a difference in your sanding, especially it'll make a difference in how long your paper is lasting, because if your edges are damaged, it's going to damage the paper a lot sooner when it's on there. But also, see, I've got some debris on here. That debris mixed with too much suction through a collection hose creates a lot of swirl marks, and that's a finish problem. That's a product problem. So inspecting this stuff is really useful. Once a month, or as needed, I'm inspecting my pads and I'm cleaning them up. Hand tools. Now, when I first started woodworking many years ago, I was a power tool nut. I love big, fast, strong, crazy handheld messes and the rush of doing it. And I remember I didn't have a lot of cash. I was starting kind of bootstrapping, and I was buying used tools or whatever I could find. And I met this older gentleman who was retiring. And he was more of like a really high-end finish carpenter, really skilled, really knowledgeable guy. And it was people like that I was able to get tips and tricks from because I had no one to teach me. And I remember him and I were discussing using power tools and routers, especially. They're my favorite, still are. And I was talking about how much I love power tools and I love routers. And he said, I don't care how good you are with a router or any other power tool, if you're doing quality work, at some point in a build, you're gonna have to use a hand tool. A sharp knife is gonna have to somewhere go on that piece. And he was right. Matter of fact, I bought this little hand plane from him and I have used it for years. It served me well. Do you know why? Because I maintain it. So hand tools also require some maintenance. The two most important things I look at with hand tools is rust and sharpening, okay? Rust isn't monthly, not if your shop is sealed properly, which if you're doing woodworking, you kind of hope it is. But sharpening, yeah. And sharpening is something that the longer you're doing woodwork, the more you intuitively kind of know how to deal with or how often. And it also can depend on what species of wood you're working with, right? Some denser woods can wear some blades and some chisels out. But the point is, something like my Japanese chisels, I use these all the time. Just got some new ones because I need them. So yeah, once a month easily, if not every other week, weekly, depending on what I'm doing. That is a definite maintenance need. If you're using your block planes or your larger planes often, you're gonna have to take them, take the knives out and sharpen them up. They also, as you can tell in here, they got a little rust. I got a little work to do on these guys. So your more specialty chisels, like this corner chisel, or I've got some other ones, more like carving gouges, stuff like that. It's really about how often you're using it. If it's a chisel I've got, it's kind of like some of the power tools. I'm only reaching for every now and then. I'm not really as worried about that on a monthly because it's just one thing. I can run over and sharpen it real quick. But my bench chisels, which would be my Japanese chisels, yeah, monthly. I at least monthly need to put them all on the sharpening, okay? Lathe knives as well. I define the need to work on these. My rule of thumb is about every 10 working hours, I resharpen my lathe knives. And if you've ever turned stuff on a lathe, you'd understand why. I mean, they're taking a beating. Other hand tools, like files, rasps, hand saws, and measuring tools, also require a little bit of maintenance. And by maintenance, what I really mean is just check them. Are they still useful? Are they still sharp? Can they still function as they need to? Do you need to order some new ones? With the pull saws, I've switched over to using the Japanese ones. I just really enjoy using them. I find them to really go with my workflow great. The great thing about these is that the blades are interchangeable. So it's an easy peasy problem to solve. I check when the blade's going bad. I always order backup blades when I order the saw. So these are little things you have to do on a regular basis because there's nothing worse than being in the middle of a job and you're on a cut and realizing you should have replaced that blade last month. It's annoying and costly sometimes. Dull blades aren't exactly a pleasure to work with, and sometimes they're problematic. Measuring tools as well, though. Like this guy, I may or may not have dropped it carrying it back in from an install and left it outside and it got rusty. Well, the rust is going to affect, because it is buildup on top of the surface, it's going to affect how accurate this angle is. So I need to clean it up. Maintenance. And then scrapers. That's everyone gets all up in arms about scrapers. With scrapers, this leads me to a new point. When it comes to sharpening, you are a business. And if you're sharpening all day long, you're not getting paid to sharpen. I know some people love the nostalgia of getting their water stones out and sharpening their Japanese chisels by hand because it is the best way to do it. It is. But I don't have all day to do that. And so what I found that works for me is I invested in a sharpening system. I've been running a Tormek for, almost 10 years. I can sharpen all of my bench chisels, all of them, and I'm done in 30 minutes if my jig's up, and it is. My gouges and everything for my lathe, 30 minutes. That to me is about getting back to the paying work. Okay, but there's also some, Tormeks and the nicer sharpening systems. I understand when you're building up a wood shop, that's just another expense. There are some smaller ones out there that can help sharpening a little easier. This is just a simple burnishing for a scraper. This just makes it easy, and it keeps me from overthinking the famous vexing scraper sharpening that everybody seems to complain about. This is just easy though. It's just quick and over. A couple times like that, and I'm good. I'm right back in the game. This is a good investment. Also, I might just try this out. This helps me sharpen my Forstner bits because I use really high quality Forstner bits. I don't really want to replace them, and I don't have a sharpening service close by. So this allows me to take care of it quickly. So really should look into some sharpening systems and consider the investment. My Tormek has paid for itself several times over by now. I'm 100% sure of that. One more thing worth noting. For those of y'all that are using spray guns to finish, and if you're not, I really hope that one day you get to the place where you can. It is so much better. Maintaining your finish equipment is a big deal. Maintaining your spray guns, I clean them out pretty thoroughly after every use, but even in the practice of doing that, it still does need a little overhaul from time to time to tidy it up. And I have found that, every couple months, depends on how much finish you're spraying, you take the gun apart and clean it. Also simple stuff like safety stuff, like filthy filters, order the replacements. Okay? Finished stuff matters. And this falls into maintenance of tooling. I've had guns I didn't clean often enough block up in the middle of shooting. It's brutal. So take care of your finished stuff. Just a little side note from me. All right, so hopefully you're getting the gist of this. I'd say the main theme is dust and dullness will always ruin the day. And so I hope some of what I've been explaining to you about maintenance helps. If there's aspects that maybe you didn't know about, like oiling and lubricating certain parts of your machines so they work better, it's really important you do this. The longevity of your machines is important. It lowers your cost in the long haul because you're not reinvesting. You know, my father taught me that when I was young. Buy the right thing once and take care of it. Showing respect for your investment is showing respect for yourself. And I have found that to be quite accurate. You take care of your machines and they'll take care of you. These are employees to me. So taking, it's kind of like having a long employee lunch once a month. It's good for camaraderie. It's good for everything to feel like it's running right. Also worth noting, take care of yourself too. That's a machine you can't replace. See you next month.